The moment you realize someone refuses to respect you, something shifts deep within. It's a silent battle, invisible to the outside world, yet devastatingly real inside your mind. Respect. Something so basic, so essential to our sense of self, suddenly becomes a fragile and contested prize. Why does this simple human need so often spiral into conflict? Why is respect given so grudgingly, withheld like a weapon? And most hauntingly, what power does the denial of respect hold over us? Imagine a quiet room. A conversation, polite on the surface but beneath, an unspoken hierarchy unfolds. One person speaks, dismissing your thoughts, your presence, your very worth, not with a shout, but with a cold glance, a cutting silence, an intentional disregard. It is subtle, yet it wounds deeper than any open insult. This is the battlefield where respect is fought, not with swords or fists, but with glances, tones, and gestures. It is a war fought in the shadows of human interaction, where the stakes are your dignity and your sense of identity. Respect is paradoxical. It is simultaneously personal and social. It is something we crave as individuals, but its value and meaning depend on others recognizing it. Yet, in that recognition lies vulnerability. The moment you depend on another's validation, you hand over a piece of your sovereignty. And here is the cruel truth ancient philosophers have long warned us about. When you let others control your sense of worth, you give away your power. The denial of respect becomes a silent weapon to manipulate, to control, and to diminish. Stoicism, a philosophy born in the fires of ancient struggle, teaches that true power is internal, an unshakable fortress of the mind and spirit. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca argued that no external force can harm you unless you permit it. The insult, the slight, the disregard, these are only as damaging as your judgment makes them. Respect, they said, must first be commanded, within, before it can be expected from the world. Yet, even with this wisdom, the sting of disrespect is profoundly human. It taps into a primal need to be seen and valued. Our ancestors lived in tribes where social standing meant survival. To be shunned or disrespected was to risk isolation, hunger, even death. In modern times, though the threats are less physical, the psychological wounds remain. The denial of respect triggers a deep anxiety, a feeling that your very existence is being questioned, dismissed. But this battle need not end in defeat. The journey toward reclaiming respect begins with understanding its paradox, that it is both given and taken, earned and declared. It requires shifting from a place of reaction to one of sovereignty, to see disrespect not as a reflection of your worth, but as a mirror of the other's limitations. To find calm amid the storm of rejection, and to build an inner fortress that no slight can breach. In this film, we will unravel the layers of this silent battle. We will explore why disrespect holds such power, how history and psychology explain its grip, and what ancient wisdom offers as a path beyond pain. This is not just a story about social interactions. It is a profound inquiry into human nature, power, and the quest for dignity. The battlefield of respect is set. The next move is yours. Disrespect is rarely just about the moment it happens. Beneath the surface, it is a tangled web of power, fear, and hidden insecurities. When someone denies you respect, they are not simply rejecting you. They are signaling something deeper about themselves and the structures that shape their behavior. To understand disrespect, we must look beyond the surface, into the psychology and social forces that drive it. At its core, disrespect is a form of power play. It is a way for one person to assert dominance over another, to establish a hierarchy where they sit above and you below. This impulse is ancient, rooted in our evolutionary past. Long before modern society, human survival depended on social order, a pecking order where the strong claimed authority and the weak deferred. This biological legacy still pulses through our interactions today, even when the survival stakes are less obvious. But power alone doesn't explain disrespect. It's also a mirror reflecting the fears and insecurities of the one who disrespects. Often, disrespect is projection, a psychological defense mechanism where people lash out not because of the other person's faults, but because of their own internal struggles. Someone who feels powerless or inadequate may disrespect others to mask their vulnerability, to create an illusion of control where none truly exists. This projection creates a paradox. Disrespect becomes both a weapon and a shield. It wounds others while hiding the wounds of the wielder. The silent message beneath the insult or dismissal is often a cry of insecurity, a desperate attempt to regain self-worth by diminishing another. This dynamic complicates the simple notion of respect as a social courtesy. It becomes a battlefield, where inner demons fight through outward aggression. Philosophers and psychologists have long grappled with these dark undercurrents of human behavior. From the Greek thinker Thucydides, who observed the ruthless pursuit of power in human societies, to modern social psychologists studying dominance hierarchies, the pattern is clear. Disrespect is rarely personal. It is a symptom of larger forces at play. Dominance hierarchies shape more than just individual relationships. They underpin social orders, institutions, and cultures. When a person disrespects another, they often act out roles prescribed by these hierarchies. It is a performance shaped by social conditioning and reinforced by cultural norms. The disrespectful act is less an expression of true feeling and more a learned response designed to maintain status and control. This interplay of power and projection is further complicated by fear. Fear of losing control, fear of vulnerability, fear of insignificance. When people feel threatened, their instinct is to protect themselves, often by attacking first. Disrespect then becomes a preemptive strike, a way to keep perceived threats at bay before they can cause harm. The tension here is palpable. Beneath the aggression lies a fragile self, trembling with fear and uncertainty. Yet this shadowy dance of disrespect is not inevitable. Recognizing these psychological and social layers allows us to see disrespect, not as a personal failure or insult, but as a complex signal, one that reveals the fractured state of both the individual and society. It forces us to question what part of our own behavior might be projection. How much of what we experience as disrespect is shaped by unseen hierarchies and fears? Understanding disrespect through this lens is unsettling. It exposes uncomfortable truths about human nature, our drive for power, our fragility, and the social machines that perpetuate these cycles. But it also opens a door to empathy and insight. By seeing disrespect as a symptom of fear and social conditioning, we gain the power to respond differently, not as victims or aggressors, but as conscious agents aware of the deep currents beneath surface conflicts. This exploration into the anatomy of disrespect takes us beyond mere reaction. It challenges us to confront the shadows within ourselves and the structures around us. Only then can we begin to unravel the tangled web of power, projection, and fear, and reclaim our own sense of respect on our terms. The silent battle of respect is a war waged in shadows. To win it, we must first understand the hidden forces that animate disrespect itself. Disrespect is rarely just a personal affront. It is often the echo of vast, unseen forces, complex systems designed not only to govern behavior, but to shape how we perceive one another. To understand disrespect fully, we must zoom out from individual encounters and peer into the social machine that feeds it. What if disrespect isn't merely spontaneous or accidental? What if it is, in many cases, deliberately cultivated and weaponized by structures of power? Throughout history, political regimes have understood disrespect as a tool, an instrument to fracture societies, weaken resistance, and maintain control. Totalitarian governments, for example, have long employed tactics that demean, belittle, and isolate targeted groups. By systematically undermining their dignity, these regimes sow division and fear. Disrespect becomes an engineered tactic to prevent solidarity, turning neighbors into suspects and friends into enemies. The message is clear: your worth can be stripped away by forces beyond your control, and any challenge to the established order will be met not with dialogue, but with disdain. Colonial hierarchies provide another chilling example. The colonial powers imposed strict social orders where disrespect was codified into law and culture. Indigenous peoples and enslaved populations were dehumanized deliberately, stripped of respect not as a byproduct, but as a mechanism to justify exploitation. Disrespect was embedded into the very architecture of these systems, normalizing inequality and creating lasting social wounds. It was a calculated assault on identity, a structural violence that shaped generations. In the modern age, propaganda campaigns continue this legacy, manipulating public perception by controlling who is respected and who is not. Media, education, and political rhetoric often frame certain groups as threats, undeserving of dignity or fairness. This orchestrated disrespect fractures communities, fueling polarization and mistrust. Disrespect, in this context, ceases to be a spontaneous insult. It becomes a strategic weapon wielded to divide and conquer. Philosophical skepticism offers a lens to question how much of what we accept as disrespect is actually engineered or normalized. How much do cultural narratives condition us to accept disrespect as inevitable or deserved? How often do we internalize these external messages, shaping our own attitudes and behaviors toward others? The social machine that feeds disrespect is both external and internal, a powerful feedback loop where societal forces and individual psychology intertwine. This dark machinery does more than influence how strangers treat each other. It infiltrates our closest relationships, subtly shaping expectations and interactions. The patterns of disrespect seen in political oppression and propaganda ripple down to everyday encounters, creating a culture where disrespect is pervasive and, disturbingly, often accepted as normal. Understanding disrespect in this broader context expands the meaning of what it is to be disrespected. It's not just a personal slight, but a symptom of structural power imbalances and cultural programming. It forces us to reconsider responsibility, not just of individuals who disrespect, but of the systems that perpetuate these behaviors, often invisibly. This realization is unsettling because it reveals how deeply intertwined disrespect is with the forces that shape our societies and our minds. The personal pain of disrespect carries echoes of political strategy, historical oppression, and cultural manipulation. It is a battlefield where individual dignity clashes with the machinations of power. Yet, in exposing these hidden structures, we gain a critical perspective. Recognizing the social machine that feeds disrespect empowers us to question the narratives we have been given, to identify the forces shaping our perceptions, and to resist the normalization of dehumanization. It is a call to awareness, not just of the disrespect we endure, but of the systems that cultivate it and the roles we may unknowingly play within them. In the face of such a vast and dark apparatus, the path to reclaiming respect becomes not only a personal struggle, but a collective challenge. To dismantle the social machine that thrives on disrespect requires courage, insight, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths about power, control, and the fragility of human dignity. True, power is often misunderstood. We look for it in status, wealth, or the approval of others, external markers that shift like sand beneath our feet. But what if the real fortress of power lies within, impervious to the slings and arrows of disrespect? This is the heart of an ancient philosophy that offers not just survival, but mastery, Stoicism. Stoicism teaches us to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. At first glance, this sounds deceptively simple, but the implications are profound. We cannot govern how others act toward us. We cannot command respect from those who choose to withhold it. Yet we retain absolute sovereignty over our own judgments, our responses, and the meaning we assign to every encounter. Imagine a man in ancient Rome, Seneca, sitting calmly amid chaos and betrayal, receiving insults that could shatter any ego. Rather than recoil in anger or despair, he met disrespect with an unshakable inner calm. He understood that allowing others to disturb his peace was conceding power he inherently owned. Epictetus, born into slavery, endured a lifetime of hardship, yet rose to teach that no external force could truly harm the soul unless it surrendered willingly. This ancient wisdom aligns with modern psychology's findings on emotional regulation and resilience. Research shows that those who perceive themselves as in control of their reactions are more resistant to stress and less vulnerable to emotional turmoil. It's not about suppressing feelings, but about consciously choosing how to interpret and respond to them. Stoicism provides a mental toolkit, a shield forged in reason and self-awareness. At its core, the Stoic response to disrespect is not passive submission, but active empowerment. It reframes disrespect from an external attack to an internal challenge. When confronted with disdain or dismissal, the Stoic asks, "Is this within my control? If not, why let it govern my peace?" This shift transforms the emotional battleground into a sanctuary of self-mastery. Consider the modern implications. In a world saturated with social media, cancel culture, and endless judgments, the temptation to react impulsively is overwhelming. Yet the Stoic approach invites a pause, a deliberate separation between stimulus and response. This moment of reflection creates space for clarity, enabling a response rooted not in anger or fear, but in reasoned strength. This is not to say Stoicism advocates cold detachment or indifference. Rather, it calls for a profound engagement with life's difficulties through the lens of acceptance and intentionality. It is the difference between being tossed by the waves and learning to navigate the storm with steady hands. By internalizing this philosophy, one builds an unassailable fortress, a place of calm amid chaos, a refuge untouched by the tides of disrespect. It is a radical reclaiming of agency, an assertion that while we cannot control others, we can always control ourselves. This section is a turning point. It moves us from the shadows of victimhood toward the light of agency. The path to peace is not found in changing others, but in mastering ourselves. As we continue, we will explore how this inner fortress withstands the pressures not only of individuals, but of the broader social machine that perpetuates disrespect. The Stoics understood that true freedom lies in this mastery, and it is within each of us, waiting to be awakened, waiting to be claimed. Setting boundaries is not merely a social skill, it is an act of profound self-respect, a declaration of freedom that echoes through every aspect of our lives. In a world saturated with demands, expectations, and often toxic influence, learning to say no is one of the most radical and necessary choices we can make. Philosophically, this act finds deep roots in existentialism, where the essence of human freedom is owning one's existence with courage and authenticity. Existentialist thinkers invite us to confront the fundamental reality that we are responsible for defining who we are. This responsibility includes choosing what we allow into our lives and what we refuse. Saying no is not rejection of others, but a fierce affirmation of our own sovereignty. It is the boundary drawn between the authentic self and the external pressures that seek to dilute or control it. The notion of authenticity demands more than just self-awareness. It demands protection. Without boundaries, our sense of self becomes vulnerable, fragmented, and subject to manipulation. Existentialists warn of bad faith, the dangerous surrender of one's freedom by yielding to external forces or societal roles that strip away individuality. Boundaries act as a shield against this erosion. Psychology offers practical insight into this philosophical foundation. Assertiveness, A skill often misunderstood as aggression is actually the art of communicating one's limits clearly and respectfully. Emotional intelligence teaches us to recognize when our peace is threatened and to respond in ways that preserve our mental and emotional health. When we set boundaries, we protect not only our time and energy, but also the delicate architecture of our identity. Consider the modern social landscape, where relentless connectivity blurs lines, where toxic relationships can drain and distort, where power dynamics masquerade as care or obligation. Without clear boundaries, individuals risk becoming pawns in manipulation, subjected to subtle coercion or overt disrespect. Boundaries disrupt this cycle. They refuse complicity in systems of control, whether interpersonal or systemic. This is why saying no is never a simple act of refusal. It is a conscious, courageous choice to safeguard integrity. It creates space for growth, peace, and genuine connection. Boundaries transform from walls that isolate into bridges that clarify and strengthen relationships by defining what is acceptable and what is not. Yet setting boundaries requires practice and inner work. It demands self-knowledge and the willingness to confront discomfort, both our own and that of others. We are conditioned to prioritize harmony and approval, sometimes at the expense of our own well-being. Philosophically and psychologically, breaking this conditioning is a form of rebellion, a reclaiming of agency. Ultimately, boundaries are the armor of the self. They are not about shutting out the world, but about engaging with it on one's own terms. In the face of disrespect and toxic influence, they become tools of liberation, allowing us to navigate complex social terrains without losing the essence of who we are. This section offers a bridge from the inner resilience explored earlier to the outward practice of maintaining one's space in the world. It is a call to embody freedom not just as an abstract ideal, but as a lived reality, grounded in the power to say no and protect the self from forces that seek to diminish it. There is a power that often goes unnoticed, a force that does not roar or strike, but whispers and endures. It is the power of silence. When confronted with disrespect, when provoked, undermined, or dismissed, our instinct is almost always to react, to defend, to fight, to reclaim our dignity with words or actions. Yet, what if the most profound response is not to respond at all? Ancient philosophies from the East have long understood this paradox. Taoism, with its flowing water metaphor, teaches the art of yielding, not as weakness, but as a source of invincible strength. Water, soft and formless, overcomes the hardest rock by persistence and adaptability. In silence and stillness, there is a force that disarms aggression, one that refuses to escalate conflict by meeting fire with fire. Buddhism deepens this insight, emphasizing acceptance and presence. The practice of non-attachment includes detaching from the impulse to react, to be swept away by anger or pain. By embracing calm, one cultivates an inner sanctuary where disrespect cannot invade or control the self. Silence, in this view, becomes a shield, both protective and transformative. History offers vivid illustrations of this principle in action. Consider figures who faced disdain, insult, or outright hostility and chose silence as their response. Their refusal to engage aggression, on its own terms, often dismantled the power dynamic. This silence was not surrender, but a deliberate act of psychological mastery. Psychology confirms what intuition suggests. Non-reaction can de-escalate volatile encounters. Emotional intelligence research shows that when one person refuses to respond to provocation, it interrupts the cycle of hostility. The aggressor is denied the gratification of eliciting a reaction, which weakens their control. Silence becomes a statement, louder than words, a demonstration that respect cannot be forced or stolen by disrespect. But this power demands discipline. It is not passive avoidance or suppression of feelings. It is an active, conscious choice. The silence that transforms is charged with awareness, intention, and self-possession. It is the calm eye within the storm, holding steady even as chaos swirls. In a world addicted to reaction, where every slight sparks a flood of responses, silence challenges us to reconsider what strength really means. It invites us to move beyond the battlefield of respect as a contest of wills, toward a place where power is rooted in inner peace. To refuse engagement is to reclaim autonomy. It is a radical act of self-control that disrupts the expected narrative of conflict. Silence speaks volumes, exposing the emptiness of disrespect and the futility of trying to meet it head-on. This section asks us to embrace stillness amid noise, to discover that the greatest victories in the face of disrespect may come not from confrontation, but from the quiet, unyielding strength of silence. Disrespect is often seen as an end, a rejection that diminishes and fractures the self. Yet, beneath this surface lies a profound truth. It can also be a beginning, a spark that ignites transformation, forcing us to confront our deepest fears and assumptions about worth and power. Existential philosophers remind us that meaning is not given. It is created, often forged in the crucible of adversity. When respect is denied, we face a choice: to succumb to bitterness or to transcend, crafting a new identity grounded not in others' validation, but in our own authentic existence. Psychology calls this process post-traumatic growth, the unexpected blossoming of strength, insight, and resilience after emotional hardship. Disrespect, painful as it is, becomes a teacher, revealing where we hold ourselves captive and where freedom can be reclaimed. This journey from rejection to renewal redefines respect not as something granted by others, but as an inner state of self-mastery. It is liberation from the fragile need for social approval, a courageous assertion of who we truly are. In this final reflection, we find hope, not in the world's recognition, but in the quiet, unshakable power of a self that honors itself, regardless of external judgments. Disrespect, once a wound, transforms into a gateway, leading us home to our own sovereign strength.